So, hello, I'd like to give you a brief introduction and overview of the scientific information resources that are available in the Max Planck Society. My name is Ben Bowman. I'm from the Information Retrieval Services in the Max Planck Institute for Biochemistry in Martinsried and head of a group called the Information Retrieval Service, Informationsvermittlungsstelle in German. When we think of scientific information nowadays, often it sort of it comes to mind that Google is the solution to all problems, or any search engine in that case. Go ask your search engine is a favorite answer that's often given if someone has a question, as the cartoon here from the New Yorker shows. I'd like to, in the course of my little presentation, just present you with a few of the common myths that are running around in the scientific community, and also some of the basic principles behind information retrieval services, and what exactly the Max Planck Society can offer to help scientists in this respect. So some of the common scientific information myths, I've called them. First of all, if it's not in Google, it doesn't exist. Second, if it's not near the top of the list, I don't need to know about it. It can't be that important. Thirdly, if I can't access the full text directly, then I don't want to read it. I don't need to read it. It's probably not that important. Also, if the interface is simple, then that's a high search quality. That's what I'm looking for. That's high quality, a simple interface. And last but not least, librarians are no longer relevant. All of these, as I point out, are actually myths, and I'll try to point out some of the facts why these are myths and what the truth is that perhaps one should try to keep in mind. First of all, it's important to remember a saying that I saw once above the research library at the Los Alamos National Laboratories, above the entrance to the main library that all the scientists had to pass every morning. It said in big letters, "Research begins here." And it's quite true, because searching the scientific literature is in fact a fundamental part of the research process. And it's not only a fundamental part of it, it's the initial step of that whole process. And as the initial step, obviously, it plays a decisive role both for the quality of research and for the responsible use of research funds. Consequently, the same scientific approach that normally is applied throughout the whole research process should, of course, also be applied when searching the literature. It seems like a simple fact, but it's unfortunately not always considered. The same scientific approach, what does that mean? This includes, of course, and applies as well for the scientific literature search, the selection of appropriate data resources or data sources, the development of targeted strategies, so strategies which will actually lead you to an answer which is usable and reliable, the application of standardized methods, using the methods as they were designed and as they have been proven to work and to bring good results. And last but not least, a prudent interpretation of the results that are received. In all of the scientific process, in all of the experiments done in the lab, all of these steps are taken into consideration normally. Why not during the initial step, the search for the literature, where they also should apply? Some critical questions, perhaps, that you should, as a scientist, ask yourselves. What are your criteria and priorities for selecting a source of scientific information? One of the most frequently given reasons or criteria are free access, or a simple interface, or full-text links. All very good, important advantages of using such systems. But what about other criteria, such as the coverage of the resource, the focus of the resource? So does it focus on the type of research, on the research area that I'm interested in? The quality of the indexing. Is there in fact any indexing in this source? Has the documents, the entities that are in this database, have they been curated? Have they been looked at? Have they been judged? Have they been evaluated? Has additional information been added? If so, by whom? And with which quality? So all of these factors, including reliability of metadata, transparency, control, these are all factors which certainly influence how well you can use an information resource and how reliable the information in that resource will be. And those should in fact be at least as important as criteria as simple interface or free access, which is not always going to be the case. Where do you look for appropriate resources? So if you're searching for a resource, who do you ask? Your colleagues, obviously. Problem with the colleagues is you know perhaps then what they know, but how good is their overview? And that can be, of course, vary depending on their experience and who they asked before. The scientific community, broader, all right, focused to your area, a reasonable source and probably a very good source to find good information resources for your area. But even then, who is managing within that scientific community adding new resources or knowing about new resources and testing or evaluating these new resources? And how is that communicated? That can be very different in these various communities. Google, of course, can be a source to find out if there's anything in that area that you're interested in. But again, is Google comprehensive enough? What about a source which, unfortunately, is not always turned to? Your own library. A library or e-libraries have resources that have been licensed, that have been selected, evaluated, especially for the research going on at the institution that you're a part of. So that selection is certainly going to also be a valuable entrance. And it's libraries in our day and age, and since many years now, have long become digital libraries, including a lot of digital electronic resources, and not only books or journals on shelves. So you don't need to go to the library, but you do want to perhaps visit the library's website and to find out which resources are available and that are not necessarily free on the web somewhere. Who can you turn to for advice and support? Another criteria or priority. If it's about technical issues, obviously perhaps your technicians, your IT group can help you out. If it's about access, the interface, tools, bugs, etc. But what about for more discipline-specific issues? When you want to discuss search strategies with someone, is your IT group going to really be able to do that for you? Or does it know enough about the resource? Does it know enough about your area to be able to do that? So that is a harder question perhaps than to answer, who to turn to for those sort of questions. What about questions relating to managing and sharing your reference collections? Once you've collected all these references from your various sources, managing them, using them, reusing them for your various reference lists or other purposes. If you have problems using such systems or even selecting such systems, who is there you can turn to? Another question, the application or interpretation of bibliometric indicators. I'm talking about indicators such as impact factor, H-index. These are terms which are frequently used nowadays for and used in the context of evaluating research or also for research planning. However, there are many difficulties associated with these factors and misinterpretations. Who can you turn to get good, reliable advice as to which ones to use and how to use them? And again, last but not least, for more complex or extensive searches of the literature, is there anyone that you can turn to help you do such complex searches or analyses? At many universities, there would be not many answers to most of these questions. Fortunately, within the Max Planck Society, as within a lot of the large major universities in the US and elsewhere, there are people who can answer these questions. In the Max Planck Society, I'll try to introduce you to those who can do that for you and the resources which are available. But let me talk a little bit at the beginning about what kind of resources these are and how they sort of relate to one another. I've placed various resources and tools in three different levels at a very simple way, very simplistic way. The bottom level, as you see here, are the primary resources. The primary resources, of course, the full text, the text that you actually want to get to, the text in the journals, in the books. And by the way, since We're involved, my group especially, in the Max Planck Society in the biological medical section. We're talking mainly about journal literature, research as published in journals, as opposed to books or other media, which is often used in other arts, humanities, or social sciences. But in the natural sciences, the primary resources are mainly journals and journal literature. As you see, I've added a gradient indicating complexity, going from the left to very simple types of resources to the right to more complex type of resources, indicating here that it's very easy and simple to add, for instance, non-peer-reviewed material on a website. It gets more complicated to add something to a peer-reviewed journal, to have something accepted there. And to get it into a top journal takes even more. So with this increase of complexity, if you want to call it that, there's also a certain degree of increase in quality that can be expected. Coming to the next level, and this is the decisive level for what I'll be talking about today, are the secondary resources, or the databases. Now, in the databases, and I've listed here several examples of some of the important databases that are available in the Max Planck Society, we can also place them on this gradient from left to right. On the left, I have here examples, for instance, Current Contents or Web of Science, two very large multidisciplinary databases that do not have any indexing of the individual articles. That is, there's no one who's adding any information about the content of these articles, but the articles are taken as they appear, the title, the abstract, the keywords, if keywords have been given by the authors, and these items are made searchable. So these are rather simple databases, multidisciplinary databases, can be very useful, but they're quite different from the databases which are here further to the right, which are discipline-specific databases. And the examples I've given here are PsycInfo for the psychological research, ERIC, educational research, Biosis, biological studies, GeoRef for geological studies, or Medline for the medical areas, and Chemical Abstracts for the chemistry. And in all of these discipline-specific databases, there are two main characteristics. First of all, they're produced by people who are in the field, and people in the field are reading each and every article and indexing it and curating it, so to speak, evaluating it, but especially adding content to those articles before it goes into the database. So the people working for the Medline database, which is produced by the National Library of Medicine, are looking at which diseases, which anatomical terms, which cell types, which concepts are being discussed in this paper, and are indicating how these concepts, diseases, cell types, etc. relate to each other in that paper. The same paper being indexed by someone working for the Biosis database, for a biology database, we'll be looking at, okay, which organisms play a role in this paper? Which taxonomic group do these organisms belong to? What is the higher taxonomy of those groups, etc.? So that all of that additional information is also then added into the database for that article. Information which the author himself did not necessarily have to specify. But a biologist reading the paper knows that and adds that information, and thus makes it easier for someone else searching for that kind of information to retrieve that article. And the same obviously applies then to the other fields, psychology, etc. And on the far right, I have here the chemical abstracts, which is particularly complex because it also looks at the substances and it registers each chemical substance and entity, the reaction path, substructures of these substances, etc., and clearly classifies them in a way that a chemist looking for research involving such chemicals or such reaction paths can find these articles, again, without the author having had to specify that or mention that specifically in the paper. So it's additional information that is not necessarily in the title, not necessarily in the abstract, and perhaps not even verbatim in the full text of the article, but is recognized by the scientist working for the database and is added because it is relevant and can help someone find that. So that is the difference in the complexity and, as you, I think, will agree, in the quality between such databases. Now we get to the top level, and this is the level where the user comes in. This is the level where you as a user want to enter this system to actually do your searching. You need an interface to interact with. This interface or retrieval systems, again, are usually produced by other people, software houses, then produce the databases. Each of these levels, by the way, are produced by different entities usually. There are, of course, exceptions. The primary resources by publishers, the secondary resources by database producers, and the retrieval systems are simply software houses that produce good interfaces. They don't worry about what's in the data. They just worry about how it's presented. Some of them do actually worry a little bit more about the data than others. And that's exactly the difference in the quality of these interfaces. And again, I've put them here in this gradient. On the left, very simple interfaces, one entry box and a go button, Google-like. The most simple interface one can think of. You type something in, you press on go, you get results. The rest is looking through those results, but your search is absolutely simple in that interface. The further right we go in these examples, we come to interfaces such as Scopus, Web of Knowledge, Ovid, SciFinder, ProQuest. Again, examples of some of the interfaces that we have available in the Max Planck Society that we've licensed. These are all licensed resources, not available for free anywhere. With these interfaces, there's much more complexity. There are pull-down menus, there are additional options, there are additional boxes, there's refined limit options, etc. Many people, when they first see this coming from Google experience, say, oh, how cluttered or user-unfriendly, much too complicated. I don't think much too complicated should be an argument for scientists. I'm sure the apparatus that you use in the lab are a bit more complicated than just having an on and off button. So having a few more options in an interface should not be too complicated for a scientist. And trust me, these interfaces are not much more difficult to learn to use than driving a car. And that's an analogy that one can apply actually, because these interfaces is the dashboard that you see when you get into the car. The performance of the car is, of course, determined by what's under the hood. And that, in this case, are these databases. That is where the power is, and in these databases. The interface shows you some ways that you can manipulate that. And the more options the interface offers you, the more it can reflect the complexity and the possibilities and the opportunities that the databases have. So the more complex these databases are, and the more, like looking at chemical abstracts, for instance, or Medline, with all of this wonderful structure of indexing, that is very hard to impossible to display with one entry box and one go button and nothing else. That's exactly what's done, by the way, in the case of the biological medical fields, in the case of the PubMed interface. The PubMed interface, which many of you in the biological field will be familiar with and use every day, is a very simple interface to use. That's why I have it here on the far left. The underlying Medline database, however, is a highly complex and sophisticated database. That's why I have that by the databases on the far right. And so it's a little bit out of line to use a very simple interface which would, for such a complex database. Why is that the case? PubMed, if you look at the name, stems from public access to medicine. It was never designed originally for use by the scientists. It was designed for use by the general public so that they could access medical information. Obviously, they wanted to use the complex database, but for the layman, they wanted to make the interface as simple as possible. So that's why the PubMed interface was created. Other interface producers, such as Ovid and others, ProQuest, Web of Knowledge, also offer access to Medline, but they do it in a much more sophisticated way that actually brings out all of that value in the Medline database. So it's not only a question of deciding which database to use, but also which interface is going to be the most appropriate to use this database. Okay, I've spent quite a lot of time now on this display, but I think that's a very important part that I wanted to point out and that perhaps is not always that clear to everyone. Now, on top of these three levels on this scheme, coming to now to the Max Planck Society, I've placed here groups which are responsible for the training and support in these areas, because for using such systems, obviously, it's very decisive to have someone who can actually help you understand and use these systems efficiently. So on that backdrop, you see here we have, first of all, the libraries, of course, of the Max Planck Society, of the local institutes that have the expertise in these primary resources in selecting, evaluating the journals that need to be available either in print or electronically. So they are networked, the libraries in the Max Planck Society, in a very good, tight network, so that they can communicate and quickly then decide which journals are needed electronically, for instance, throughout the Max Planck Society, and can make those available and be sure that the local needs are reflected. So if you have questions to these primary resources, your library is the obvious person to ask and for support in that area. When it comes to the databases and the retrieval systems, there are two groups within the Max Planck Society that have expertise in that area, and those are the two information retrieval service groups. We have one in the biological medical section that I head in Martinsried, Max Planck for Biochemistry, and another such group at the Max Planck Institute for Solid State Physics in Solid State Research in Stuttgart, the IVS-CPT. And in these two groups, we have people that you can turn to at any time. These are people with scientific background, chemists, biologists, physicists, who know these areas, these fields, who know the databases, who know the retrieval systems, and have been working with them a long time, and are there to help you select and use these systems efficiently. In the background, obviously, there are also people involved providing management, administrative, technical services, and also helping to finance these tools. That's organized by the MPDL, the Max Planck Digital Library group, and also some technical assistance and support by the GWDG, the Computer Center in Göttingen. I'll just go very quickly through this slide because it gives you a little bit of a historical back view of what has been done in information services in the Max Planck Society. And the main thing to remember here is that it's been actually electronic information services have been provided for over 30 years now within the Max Planck Society. So long before the internet, long before CD-ROMs, it was already, as you see here, quite common to do online literature searches. These were the two groups, the IVS-BM, IVS-CPT, who performed these searches on behalf of the scientists. And then obviously, and that started in the 70s, 80s, and in the 90s, then obviously when it started to become appropriate to actually have databases on your desktop and be able to access them, our groups were involved in then selecting these resources and being sure that the right resources under the right interfaces were being made available within the Max Planck Society. So using our experience with these databases and interfaces to make the selections for the users in the Max Planck Society. In the late 90s, of course, the electronic age exploded with all of these resources coming up, the electronic journals, etc., and many other databases and sources, and we've always been very heavily involved in selecting, evaluating these, and also improving them, working together with the producers of these systems. And then 2007, the Max Planck Digital Library Group was founded to consolidate some of these activities and to be sure that they can be continued. But they have a long history before that. One of the things that was possible with the Max Planck Digital Library was that a portal was then, of course, developed to make it a little bit easier to access all of these different types of interfaces and databases, because many people are, of course, asking for more simple access. That can be done, and it was done, and it is available. However, as you can see on the scheme here, the portal, which is called VLib, the virtual library, it allows access to many resources at the same time under a very simple interface. But with that simplicity, you lose, unfortunately, quality. That is, it cannot replace the quality that is inherent in the more advanced search systems. It simply reduces those possibilities to a bare minimum to make it simple to use. So it's okay for getting started, perhaps, and getting an overview, but for doing serious searching of the literature, certainly not good enough. And for that, one needs to then go into the more advanced search interfaces that are available. Another tool that was developed by, within the responsibility of the Max Planck Digital Library was a linking service, which also is something which is available at many universities. It's, in our case, we call it the MPG SFX service. This is a tool which is found as a little button on the level of the individual articles within the databases. So once you've done a search, you've found an interesting article, you'll find this little button, MPG SFX. Once you click on that, you will immediately be given a menu, a selection of options with more relevant information to that specific article coming from other electronic resources, or from the full text resource of that article. So from very many different electronic resources are pulled together specifically at the article level so that you have it immediately available. So that's a very nice tool that was then implemented, and you'll find that in almost all of the databases that we have within the Max Planck Society. This scheme simply gives another view of that portal, as indicated here as this gray circle surrounding all of these different types of resources, and in the middle with the MPG SFX sort of connecting all of these resources in a context-specific way. As you can see also from this scheme, there are hundreds of different types of electronic resources which are actually available, from databases to full-text collections, internet portals, ePrint servers, electronic reference works, electronic library catalogs of the various institutes, but also of external institutes, international institutes also. And all of this information is available within the Max Planck Society. Most of it licensed resources, some of it also resources which are integrated, but they're generally offered for free also. So how do you get to all these resources and services? One of the ways to find a good overview, because I obviously cannot do that here in the short time, check your library's website. Hopefully your institute still has a library. It is absolutely essential to be able to get an overview of the resources that are available within the Max Planck Society. This is communicated through the libraries of the institutes. So your libraries know which resources are available, and obviously on their websites then they will make a selection of these resources, of the databases, the catalogs, the journals, and present them as direct links for the people in their institute. However, if you want to get a more general overview about what else is available within the Max Planck Society, then again, your library will probably also have links to some of the central service units, such as the Max Planck Digital Library, but also, hopefully, to the two information retrieval service groups, the IVS-BM, IVS-CPT, either under the name Information Retrieval Service or Informationsvermittlungsstelle, or under the abbreviations. If you cannot find these links, ask your librarian. They'll be, of course, willing to help you and assist you in finding these. For the rest of my talk today, I'd just like to quickly take you through our website, the IVS-BM website, where you have this more general and broader overview. One way that you can find our website, if the library, for instance, does not have a direct link there, you can go to the main website of the Max Planck Society at www.mpg.de. There, if you look under Institutes, on the left, then you'll see the pull-down menu, which after the Institutes also mentions Research Services. And under Research Services, if you click on that, you will see the Max Planck Digital Library, MPDL, but also the Information Retrieval Services. So these two groups. There you'll get some information about what we actually do and some background information also, plus of course links directly to those two, to the websites of the two units, and a few additional links to interesting articles that have appeared elsewhere in the Max Planck Society about the work of the IVS-BM. So going to our our website, our page, the IVS-BM. On the left, you see an overview, but also on the first page here, a brief overview of the areas in which we provide services and support. That's providing access to databases, performing searches and analysis, user support and training, and bibliographic management. Those are the four main areas where we can provide assistance. And I'll just very quickly run through some screenshots of our website so that you have a feeling of what you can find there, and encourage you, of course, to go there live. In the area access to database, you have, of course, the links to the virtual library portal, but also to the more advanced search systems that I mentioned, the Ovid, Web of Knowledge, ProQuest, also Scopus, SciFinder, STN-Easy. All of these resources being organized and supported by the two information retrieval services groups. So any questions in those areas, you can turn to us, and these links on these pages, of course, lead you directly into those systems. There are also a couple of additional tools which we have on a separate web page that I also encourage you to have a look at. These are smaller tools, but very specific tools that might be of interest in certain contexts. Starting at the bottom here of the list, the Henry Stewart talks. These are over 1,000 lectures by prominent scientists in the biomedical areas worldwide that are available online. By the way, all of these resources on this page are licensed resources. None of these are available for free. So these are all sources that we have selected, evaluated, licensed for you to use within the Max Planck Society. The Biology Image Library, collection of images, animations that are free to use for presentations, for your not for publications, but for presentations. If you have people come into your institute, Day of the Open Door or something like that, then you can use these very good images, scientific images, or you can contribute your own images that you might have, electron microscopic images, to this collection. Another nice tool, the Faculty of 1,000, evaluation of the literature on a weekly basis by prominent members of the various biochemical fields. So you can find out what they have chosen or selected as being particularly interesting paper to look at during the last week, and why they feel this paper is particularly interesting. Good way to prepare for your journal club, etc. So I won't go into all of them. Again, have a look when you visit our site live. There's also an area that we provide help with, and that's the area of searches and analysis. So if you have the feeling that your own searching is not perhaps leading to the results that you need, not reliable enough, not comprehensive enough, or perhaps the type of the field that you're interested in is not covered well enough by the databases. If you have any questions or feel that you would like to have a professional to do those searches for you or together with you, then of course you can also turn to the information retrieval groups. That's what we originally were also set up for, and what we of course still do, not in that extent as we used to do it, but we're still available for these types of searches, and we're very happy about getting more complex searches because the simple ones you can do yourself. The complex ones, please turn to us, and we will be very happy to help you to solve those problems. Especially if it goes into the areas of bibliometric analysis. Bibliometric analysis, as I mentioned before, is using citations, for instance, to evaluate research, but also in the context of research planning. Now, there's a lot of possibilities there, and there are a lot of difficulties and a lot of misinterpretations. There's a lot of misuse, unfortunately, also going on. Things like a personal impact factor, which actually doesn't exist, but is being used, and there are various formulas around for doing this, or even grant applications which require the people applying to present their personal impact factor. It's very unfortunate. It's a misuse. I would even say it's an unethical procedure, because it has nothing to do at all with the actual research performance. It's measuring something completely different. This, similar problems, but on a different scale, are also involved in indicators such as the H-index, which is also often used in the wrong way, in the wrong context. So if you have questions or problems in those areas, please turn to us and we can certainly help you out with that. Also on the webpage, as I show you here, just an excerpt from our web pages there. We've written many articles and given presentations that you're welcome to access to give you more information about using these bibliometric indicators in the correct way. An area which we recently entered in, about 2 years ago, is bioinformatics support. We realize that there's a lot of need also in the area of bioinformatics for getting an overview of tools that are available and getting a curated selection of tools and having someone explain these tools. For that, we've put together, or we've organized, a bioinformatics support network within the Max Planck Society that has helped us put together various tools, such as a wiki which covers over 200 bioinformatic tools that have been produced within the Max Planck Society, but also to help us select software and perhaps then license that centrally. That is important for many institutes. For instance, at the moment we have a negotiations going on, a trial evaluation period going on for the IPA software for Max Planck wide. I can show you just this brief screenshot of the wiki for these bioinformatic tools. That's under www.bioinfowiki.mpg.de. These are the access to those over 250 tools that are free to use, that have been produced by your colleagues in the various labs within the Max Planck Society, and you're welcome to add more, your own, if you have some, and they're not in here yet, please get in touch with us. The Bio Support Network that I mentioned, we have over 50 people involved. They're coming from various institutes as depicted here, and this information is also on our website. So again, if your institute is not represented, let us know. If someone, it would be good if someone from your institute would also join this network to be able to contribute information, but also receive information and pass that on to everyone who is interested at the institute. A third area that we're involved in is offering workshops, both in the literature searching and management, but also for bioinformatic tools and services. I just briefly show this poster, which some of you might have already seen in your institutes. Again, this is distributed through the libraries, which are very helpful as a distribution and contact persons within the institutes for these services. So we're offering a collection of online workshops regularly. You see the schedule here coming up for June, and you're welcome to join any of these. They usually take about 90 minutes or so, and you sign up for them online and can ask questions. You hear the presentation, see the presentation. So it's interactive, it's taking place live, but you don't have to leave your office or your lab. We've had good participation coming not only, by the way, from the biological medical field, but as you can see on this screen, just to indicate there's also a lot of usage coming from the CPT section, also from the social sciences humanities section, because of course some of these databases and tools that we are offering, that we offer support in, are offering workshops on, are just as relevant for those areas of research. So it doesn't matter which area of research you're from, you'll probably find something useful in this collection of workshops that we offer. And last but not least, the reference management systems. These are, of course, software tools which are frequently used for managing your own reference collection, tools such as EndNote, JabRef, Mendeley, etc. They're commercial tools, they're free tools, open source tools, web-based or not web-based, etc. So what we've done is simply to have people in our group who are looking and evaluating the various types of software systems that are out there, the new ones that are coming up, evaluating them according to the various criteria, as you see here, and then giving you the information as to where the differences in these systems are, where they have their advantages and disadvantages, and for each of the individual systems, we add notes, including things like what we like about the system, what we don't like about the system, so that will help you to make a selection based on knowledge and the experience that we've had in using these systems and testing them. So with that, we come to the end, and I'd just like to leave you with this last slide, which gives you an overview of the contact people within the two information retrieval service groups. Again, your library is perhaps the first person to contact if you have questions, but of course you're more than welcome then to get also directly in touch with any of us from the two information retrieval service groups in Martinsried, by Munich, or in Stuttgart, and we will be glad to help you and encourage you to use these tools and make the best of your time within the Max Planck Society for using these information resources, which we will not necessarily find at very many other sites. So take advantage of this possibility and get in touch with us, visit our workshops so that we can help you. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.